right, Danny Kelly is here. Danny Kelly told me I had a heart out in 90 minutes.
Can we do that? Can we make it?
Can we make it 90 minutes of a combine preview? Could you talk for 90? So. Could you talk for 90 minutes about the combine?
I came ready to filibuster this thing for 90 straight minutes.
Let me ask you a question.
Should we start now?
If some deity came down and said you have to fill a 90-minute podcast on a topic, if you stop or run out of content, your soul is no longer yours. Okay, so it's like the devil went down to Georgia, except about podcasting. What topic could you fill 90 minutes on? It doesn't have to be football. It doesn't have to be sports.
Probably fantasy football. I just read my top 350 rankings.
I said if you run
out
of content, detail. Now we're doing. Your soul is gone. The deity seems like this is not content. This is just you reading.
Okay, actually, and realistically, I'll just talk dad stuff. I could talk dad stuff forever.
We could talk dad stuff.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
What's your number one dad take right now?
Geez, that's tough. I would say that I think the interesting thing about being a dad is dealing with the like daycare dynamics in terms of the teachers, the daycares itself, the other parents, the dynamics, they're there. Not in a bad way. It's just like it's like this whole new social circle that you didn't have for most of your adult life, and then you're dealing with it.
I've been surprised. Is the only thing I'm gonna say that relates to football. I've been surprised how often, and I'm not like, you know me, I don't have a temper. I take everything pretty in stride. I've been surprised how many dads in the playground I'd like to fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
You just like, and not, so 10% of the time it's because the dad's being a tool. 90% it's because I hate their child. How their child is interacting with my child.
Yeah. Do you ever have the thought where you're like, oh, okay, this kid is just the worst?
And that parent needs to step in, and then you go, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna have to fight the dad.
I immediately have that thought, and then I immediately am like, oh, wait, do other parents hate my kid too? Like, are we supposed to tell each other when our kids are being assholes, or is it like sort of like a taboo thing that you don't tell someone that? And then
I think you give a look, or you do the thing, or you do the thing where you pretend you're talking to your kid, but you're actually talking to the general public.
Totally.
You're like, oh no, I wouldn't go there. There's a child who's just wildly swinging his arms,
right,
and is maybe puking everywhere.
Just throwing a giant rock.
I wouldn't go there. Yeah. I wouldn't go there. There's a kid with a baseball bat who's 2. Like, you just say that, and you pretend you're talking to your child, but you're actually talking to everybody. All right, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to do the combine. Do you like the combine?
I do. It's fun.
Yes.
It's great to see everybody every year. It's like it's probably the biggest events. The Super Bowl and the combine are where the most people go, I feel like, in the media. So it's always great to see everybody and catch up with everyone. From a football point of view, it's cool to like see the players in person and kind of get a feel for how big or small they are or whatever. And talk to them a little bit and see their type of personalities they have. And so I think it's definitely a productive week. And again, it's just really fun to see everybody.
I wish I could say the same. I don't like seeing anybody. No, I'll say this. I'll say this.
Talking.
Everybody. No, I do. Everybody. I'll have young reporters sometimes be like, "What's your combine advice?" And my combine advice, my number one combine advice, is to nurse a beer. Don't
slowly,
as slow as humanly possible, to the point that I wouldn't be mad if you don't actually take a sip. You just have an Amstel Light in your hand. I've given this advice to many young reporters. 95% of them, like an hour later, I see
don't
like
listen.
9 IPAs deep.
Well, that's the it's a hard contrast, because you're right. You should absolutely nurse that beer, but you have to talk to so many new people and how you have like that the nerves of being in a social situation. I feel like it's a good.
What do we do? Our nerves
when the beer gets flowing.
We're
do you not
reporters.
Wait, are you an extrovert? I'm a big time introvert.
It's our job. It's our job to go to the Bills assistant general manager. Go, hi.
Oh, I'm just talking about other
doing
media
my
people.
job.
I'm not even talking about team people. I'm talking about
other
whoever.
media,
Yeah, just
you're shaking
people
in your boots because you
being outside of your house,
You gotta sit down next
leaving
to
your home, leaving
an
the safety
athletic
of your home.
reporter.
Yes.
You gotta have 11 IPAs.
I gotta get a little bit lubricated to just leave my house. No, I'm just kidding.
You need to have 11 IPAs because
I'm just crushing beers.
Greg Allman from Fox is there.
It
And you're
takes
like,
me,
whoa, he's got great Bucks coverage.
3 to 4
can't do
beers
this.
just to leave the hotel.
This is
just to get me out of the room.
unbelievable. It's part of the job description to be social.
Yeah.
Okay. You're not even a Zoomer.
I think that
you can't even do like I grew up behind computer screens, I'm a Zoomer kind of thing, or phone screens.
Right. I was in high school in the pandemic or whatever. Yeah.
This is bad. I didn't know this. I wouldn't have booked you. All right, we're doing the combine preview. What do you get out of the combine? Like what do you like? There's so much you can do. I've settled on this, Danny Kelly, which is that I used to overrate the combine. And then I realized there were some positions where it just doesn't matter. And part of that, and I've said this a million times, like I fell in love with Andre Dillard because I was like, it was during my athleticism at every position phase, which we all go through. And then you go, oh, okay.
I've been there, yeah.
Well, also the Eagles did the same thing. They bet on athleticism. The Packers have done it too. They drafted Jason Spriggs. And in each case, it turns out their overall bet on offensive line paid off. Like they both have really good offensive lines. They just missed on those particular ones. But offensive line to me is now a tape only position would be my, unless you're like a complete disaster. Even then, testing,
right.
I'm okay with you. Defensive line, I have to see explosion. I have to. That's the one thing if you're not an athlete, I don't want you on my team pass rushing. I don't even want you really anywhere on my defense. If you're not an athlete, you shouldn't be on defense.
Right.
Quarterback, don't care about testing. Don't care about throwing. Don't care. Remember when Blake Bortles was throwing and everybody was like, scouts love his moxie. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like the good quarterbacks who don't throw. Wide receiver, I'd like to see. I think there's some types of receivers I need to see explosion on or athletic testing. Obviously, there's thresholds with the 40, but then like you fall in love with these guys. You know, Miles Boykin, I think, was one of these guys where I was like, look at those testing numbers, and it's like, oh, wow, he stinks. He should have played safety. Should have been on my defense, but he should have been a pass rusher. It's gain 100 pounds, buddy.
Seriously.
So I've become more nuanced, but that's kind of where I'd leave what I get out of the combine now. And then gossip, generalized
gossip is the big one. I think that's where you get everybody together. You get them drinking a little bit, like we were talking about, and loose lips sink ships, and people talk about stuff they probably shouldn't be talking about. But that's one of the big things. I think for the on-field stuff or whatever, the testing portion, there's, like you said, there's benchmarks, there's thresholds, and the most important thing is if you find out or sort of determine that a player just has not NFL athleticism. I think that's the big thing. I think there's such a wide spectrum of athleticism that works in the NFL. Bucky Irving was a guy that kind of like sort of solidified this thought in my mind last year, because I remember thinking, coming into the draft, I'm like, he's small and he's slow. And that just usually doesn't work in the NFL for running backs. But the problem is he was really good at football, and he's really elusive, and he's really like, he's quick. He doesn't have to be necessarily super fast. And so I think there's shades of gray when it comes to athleticism. And I'm not going to write anybody off because, they are average athleticism wise. But if you're like really bad, if you do not have NFL athleticism overall, that's the kind of thing where I'm looking for. So I don't know. And the other guy, that Kamari Lassiter last year, I think he didn't test at the combine. I think he maybe just tested as pro day, but he's another example of like, I kind of got too low on him because he ran a slow 40, but here's the deal. He's really instinctive in coverage, and that makes up for the lack of overall speed. So I think you can point to benchmarks, but for me, the big thing is like, if they are just not an NFL athlete, that matters. But otherwise, it's just kind of shades of different athleticism.
I liked the idea that the receivers added the gauntlet drill a couple of years ago, which is how fast you move with the ball in your hands. I wish that they innovated more with positions, other positions with that.
Right.
Like, I'd love to see every position have something that kind of tests instincts like that, how well you move. Puka Nakua was the best at the gauntlet 2 years ago.
Right. It's like
Last
the
year was
GPS stuff.
Yeah, last year was Keon Coleman. Puka Nakua was better than Keon Coleman.
Right.
But still, Keon Coleman's, I guess, is an NFL player.
He's on track to be, I believe. He obviously started for the Bills for for pretty much the whole season.
I noticed that.
Didn't do as well as I think a lot of people expected, but that's okay. But yeah, I think the problem is, and this is the reason the combine is what the combine is they have like however many years, 30, 40 years of data, and you use that as comparisons over the years for like baseline athleticism or whatever. And if you change everything, obviously then you don't have that historical data to kind of like compare these guys to. And I think that's like, we're starting to see that with GPS, where there's more and more seasons of data available to these teams. And so they can kind of compare how, like, what these numbers mean year over year and get more use out of them. But I think until then, we're just going to continue to kind of see the same old stuff in the combine. We say it every year, like, oh, the 40 doesn't matter, but they do it because it gives them context of what kind of athlete this person is compared to guys from 10 years ago or whatever. And they can use that as a baseline comparison. If you just have these numbers in a vacuum, it doesn't really mean anything.
All right, we're doing combine storylines. What's the first one?
Quarterbacks are always the big story. I know I'm breaking new ground here. The quarterbacks at the combine are going to be a big story. Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders is like the big one. Where do you land on that, Miami fan?
Cam Ward.
Yeah.
But can either of those guys do anything next week? To me, I think the drop off is so significant after 2. I get people are saying Jackson Dart's 3.
I'd say that's probably the consensus now.
And then it's like Will Howard, Riley Leonard, Tyler Shuck, like that crew.
Jalen Milroe,
excuse me, I forgot.
He's actually the guy that has maybe the most to gain at the combine among quarterbacks, just because he is really, really athletic, and that could be kind of his way to generate some buzz right now. Because coming out of the Senior Bowl, I think there was a lot of concern with his accuracy. His hand size is really small, which is probably going to take him off boards completely for some teams. He's got like the Kenny Pickett sub 9-inch hands. And so, if he can run a 4.3, do a bunch of really, really fast agility drills, he's probably going to look good in a lot of the passing drills because he's got a strong arm. I think he could start to generate some buzz just because teams are like, we can use these tools and we can develop these tools. I don't think the other guys have anything remotely similar to the types of speed and tools that he has. So I think Milroe is going to be a pretty big storyline here. And I'm very excited to watch him run and do the drills because he just has special athleticism.
Where should Milroe go? Like round one.
What team?
Let's give both team and round, but when you say he can help himself, does that mean he can be a second round pick? Does that mean he's going to move from 5th to 4th? I don't know. I think he could. Right now, it feels very unlikely the first round is I agree
in play. But I think right now, if teams don't know his athleticism, if there's not much hype around him, if the buzz isn't growing, 3rd round, maybe like that 4th round. There's not a lot of 3rd round quarterbacks. I heard somebody talking about this recently. It's like basically that's kind of a spot where you don't take quarterbacks. It's either
unless you're Pete Carroll in 2012.
Round, exactly. So I think he's probably in that 3rd round, 4th round range right now, and he could definitely build into the 2nd round with a really good week. And I think what I've heard from people too is that he's like a great guy, really smart, really hard worker. And so I think he could have some team just fall in love with him and be like, this could be a developmental guy for us. But I don't think he's getting into the first round.
He's a stash away guy for a couple of years. Like totally. A good team takes him, gives him reps, and then we see what's what.
It's like, not to compare everything to Jalen Hurts, but the Jalen Hurts situation where the Eagles at the time, they were kind of panned for picking Hurts because they had a quarterback. They just paid him. And
the quarterback factory.
Yeah, but it worked out for him, obviously.
Should the Eagles take Jalen Milroe?
Honestly, it would not surprise me.
No, they're a quarterback factory. That's their whole thing.
Honestly, and it makes a lot of sense too, because I think he could run, a really pared down version of what the Eagles run in terms of, quarterback run game stuff, throw the ball deep, play action, that kind of thing. Stylistically, he does kind of mirror Jalen Hurts from, just like a ability to run, ability to push the ball down the field.
Jeffrey Lurie once told me they don't refer to backup quarterbacks. They call them the second quarterback because they know they're going to play.
I like that.
That's how you end up winning the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. You don't have a backup, you have a second quarterback.
Yeah.
Tanner McKee hot seat?
I don't know, man. Tanner McKee might be the hot trade target for a lot of teams. Get this guy coming in and being a starter. I don't know if you've seen his numbers from this season, but they're outstanding. 4 or 5 passes and a couple of touchdowns. It's pretty incredible ratio, really, when you think about it.
I'm gonna pass.
He's also extremely tall.
He is. That's right. He's also one of these guys who's a really hot high school prospect.
Oh yeah.
Really, you always have that with Davis Mills is like that too, where it's like they're kind of a joke in the NFL, and then you look and they're like, they were Nick Saban was like, please come play for us. That's. I didn't think about it. No, it's okay. Your dog.
My dog is barking his face off. Yeah.
But no, it's funny because I was actually thinking about Kyle McCord today. Because Kyle McCord, I thought was awesome last year. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I know how much you've watched of him.
Yeah, I've watched him a little bit.
I think I have PTSD. He was amazing against Miami. He also the other thing about Syracuse nobody realizes their skill guys were awesome. They were always open. They picked apart man to man, especially at home against Miami. But I have a hard time. It's hard for me to Nathan Peterman picked apart Clemson when the year Clemson won national championship.
Yeah.
These guys who are field players, they get hot for 2 months and then they get to the NFL and they're a joke. I think McCord's probably better than that. I'm not comparing him as a player at all. I'm just saying I think that McCord can play in the NFL, and I think he's probably going to be in the mid-round conversation. I think there's a reason. So he was trying to petition for another year of eligibility, and then he just stopped. And I don't think he would have gotten it anyway. Everybody tries that, but he just stopped pursuing that. My guess is the feedback he got is he's probably going to be a mid-round pick. He's got an arm, he can move. I mean, the biggest thing last year with McCord that really impressed me was that he got the ball out under pressure. He got the ball out, which is the hardest thing. With the thing about this part, I've probably said a lot, but NFL coach who's been at both college and pro. I said, what do we need to know about the college schemes? And he said, the thing about college offenses is they're just terrified of your pressure. They're terrified. They don't want any exotic pressure. Their quarterback can't handle it. They don't have any idea. I forget who the team was, but somebody was, this is separate, but somebody was telling me there's a college team that brings 7 guys all the time because there's assumption is the quarterback's going to panic, and he does. It always works. Nobody can handle it except Arch Manning's be able to handle it because he's a Manning, but everybody else I don't know. And so just zero blitz, you'll be fine. But with McCord, the one reason I was so impressed with his ability to get the ball out with guys in his face. He had a bunch of guys out into routes. It was a wide open offense, and he hung in there. He took hits. I think he's an NFL guy.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, he's a great example of a second quarterback or number 2 quarterback. And I think what you're saying about handling pressure too is a lot of the reason I think people are high on Jackson Dart. Some of his numbers versus pressure versus the blitz this year are really good. He kind of has that ability, that gamer mentality to stand in there and in the pocket, be tough and get the throw off even when he knows he's going to get hit. So I think there's some people that like him for that reason.
I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I think he'll probably end up being a second round. I don't know. It's tough to know right now because there's so much buzz and it's hard to know whether it's realistic or not. But late first, early second is definitely possible for Dart.
Sure. I mean, somebody has to fall in love with them. I just don't. The quarterback stock thing is the most bizarre thing to monitor in the world. Remember the year Ryan Nassib was getting first round buzz, and then it turned out to be completely fake.
I mean, it was Malik Willis a couple years ago.
Yes, Malik Willis.
He was
people
getting.
Were should he go second overall? And then
100%.
No. Can't. And then Matt LaFleur was like, he should have gone second overall. Look at him go.
I know.
He's undefeated.
Better than Jordan Love? Maybe no.
My first storyline is Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
So he's going to be listed as a DB, but he's going to do both.
Mm-hmm.
I think the tape on him suggests he can do both. He will do both. If he doesn't do both, Goodell should step in and get him to a team that will do both. The leading sort of theory, Danny, is that he's going to play full-time defensive back with a package of offensive plays. That sounds pretty good to me.
Right.
What are you expecting in his not just combine, but his workouts over the next couple of months? What are teams going to want to see from him? Do they want to see anything? And then where does he go?
So I think the big question is whether he's going to test or not. There's this report that he ran like a 4.2 in high school, which of course is, like more lore than anything probably. Yeah. But he, I think, is undoubtedly one of the best athletes in this draft. And he would be one of the best athletes in the NFL the day he steps on the field. He's that athletic. He's that springy, agile, body control, everything. It's part of what makes him so good at both positions. So I'll be very curious to know if he even tests. Like, he might already be kind of locked into that top three. I don't know if he necessarily needs to test. Some guys are just competitive and want to test and show off what they can do. So, and I think I heard Jay Glazer, I believe, reported it a couple weeks ago that most teams are looking at him as a corner, and then sprinkle in some offense too. I don't know logistically how it would work to do it the other way. Like, I think it would take a creative team, and I don't know exactly how it would work in terms of just like playing him full-time at receiver, where you're playing 50, 60 snaps at receiver or whatever it is, and then mixing in on defense. I don't really understand how that works logistically or why they would do that. Or I guess like my question is like, does that provide the value that you're going to get in terms of having a full-time elite corner, which I think he can be, and a guy who could come in and get a first down or do whatever in the red zone?
Well, there's also just it's a lot easier to get a good wide receiver than a good cornerback.
That's pretty much my thesis with him too. Is like, he might actually be a better receiver. I don't know. But it's harder to find a shutdown corner, I think. And so he just provides more value as a full-time shutdown corner who can also play on offense. And I think that's what makes him special. That's what makes him unique. If he was a full-time receiver, I don't know. There's just a lot of good receivers in the NFL. And, I don't know if you're getting quite as much value out of him that way. So I don't know. It's a tough question. It's going to be interesting to see. I haven't heard him say what he wants. Maybe he'll get asked that question at the combine and answer it.
He wants to do both.
I mean, clearly he wants to do both. He's very competitive, but I think it depends on which team he lands with. Obviously, that's the big thing. What coach is going to be willing to play him full time on both sides of the ball? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there is one. Would you rather have Cam Ward? So let's say that you're the Titans and you need everything. Mm-hmm. Would you rather start your build with Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, or Travis Hunter?
Ooh, that is a tough question. Man, I think I'd lean take one of the blue chip guys. In my mind, it's Turner and Carter are the two like big blue chip players. I think you could add Genty in there because he's a running back. It's a little different, but like, no. For me, I would do Hunter or Carter. I think both are incredible options. I think both have potentially all pro players. Cam Ward obviously is a quarterback, and it's so much more important to have a good quarterback, but I don't know if I believe in him that strongly to take him over one of these two guys I think are really going to be immediate impact, big time playmakers. So I think if I was the Titans, I would probably go the veteran route at quarterback, take Carter, Hunter, and probably in that order. It's just starting from the trenches with the number 1 overall pick, probably take Carter and just build your defense and see what you can do on offense with like a veteran or whatever. Maybe Will Levis taking a year or two off will end up developing and turning into a better player. So I think that would be the route.
I beg your pardon.
It's like we're like do the Sam Darnold career path where you kind of have to like take a back seat for a little while and get some reps under you. I think it was just like basically he was just playing too fast. And so having some experience under his belt might help. I'm not saying I believe in Will Levis, but this might be sort of the route they could get some actual value from him instead of just kind of giving up on him right away.
Anything else on Will Levis? Any wildly optimistic Will Levis takes? You got
Look, I'm not saying they should start the guy. I'm saying
It
they
sounds
should,
like you are.
no, I'm saying they should start him in 2028,
Got
maybe, or something
Got
like
it.
that.
So what you're saying is we should innovate by instead of just doing the Darnold thing on his fourth team, you
Yeah.
just do it on the first team and bench him
Right.
for 3 years.
Sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Good idea.
Quarterback factory.
They'll get right on.
Who would, what, because obviously
I'll
you're
go Ward
a
1.
big Cam Ward guy.
I
You
am
go
big Cam
Ward.
Ward. I go Ward 1, but if I wasn't going Ward, I go Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
I need to see how Carter tests. I want to see his measurables. We'll just do my second storyline first.
Sure.
We can do it's like a snake draft of storylines.
Totally.
But like for me, it's what defensive linemen are going to get firmly in the elite conversation by their testing. I'm looking at James Pierce from Tennessee, who seems to be slipping down draft boards for reasons other than football. Carter, obviously, need to see how he tests, how he weighs. I was looking at the freaks list Bruce Feldman does, which is kind of a template for who the freaks are going to be at the combine the next year. And it's
Right.
mostly the top guys. Josh Farmer from Florida State is on the list, and he didn't, he's not like a considered, first round pick or whatever, but he's gotten some high mid round buzz, I guess you could say. So he's in the mix. A couple other guys stayed in school. A couple other guys are just young. And then we'll keep an eye on kind of how that goes next couple of years. But as far as the upperclassmen go, or the guys who are draft eligible, a lot of those guys are just the top guys. So I want to see like how this. So for me, the things I look at 40 to some, 20% maybe, just making sure you're an NFL player with the 40. But then vertical jump, broad jump,
explosion.
Just give me the explosion. You cannot be an unexplosive pass rusher.
Right.
You cannot be. You can be an unexplosive 3-4 defensive end if you're going to just stand up and be fat. I'm fine with that.
Take on blocks.
Yeah. I was fat as hell when I was younger. I wasn't explosive at all. I could have done whatever. And so I didn't need explosion. And then, but those guys aren't worth a huge first round pick. Those unexplosive players are not. So for me, it's to find out who those guys are. That's why I still, it's hard for me. The draft doesn't start for me until I see testing, because I don't know, like, I think you and I were together when Myles Garrett tested, and it's like, okay, we've seen Myles Garrett. We know what he looks like. We know he's going to test well, but then it's like, okay, he checked the box. He's one of the best, most athletic pass rushers of all time. Good. Ship him up to number 1. We're fine. But like, it is a huge part. It's pass fail to me. It's pass fail.
Right.
You have the tape that shows how athletic you are. What are you going to do about it? Now, I'm going to give you a great example. Jalix Hunt, this time last year. I loved his numbers. I talked about it. I don't remember what episode it was on. I loved his numbers. I watched the tape from Houston Christian. I did not. Houston Christian or Houston Baptist? Do we know? Houston Christian. I'm going to guess Houston Christian. So
small school
in Houston. And I thought he played hesitantly. Houston Christian. I thought he played hesitantly, and I wondered if he was going to be a developmental guy. Like I would have drafted him because of his testing numbers, but then all of a sudden he gets in Vic Fangio's defense. All of a sudden he's in Patrick Mahomes' face in the Super Bowl in year 1. That's why you bet on athleticism on the front 7. That's why you do it. We used to do draft pods.
Weren't you high on Alex Highsmith a couple years ago too? And
I was high on Fred Warner.
Oh, that's a good one too.
I was really high on Fred Warner. I was really high on Alex Highsmith. I was really high. There's a lot of those guys I was really, really, really high on. I don't know ball like elite scouts. So I've always said this, and I'm going to say it again. If I was a GM, we would probably go 3-14 every year, or worse, We would have a steady stream of guys, even in that context, going to Canton.
Yeah,
I'd be drafting Hall of Famers, like 3 Hall of Famers.
Jags,
yeah. Like I'd be drafting. Yes, exactly. I'd be drafting. I would get like 5 guys into Canton if I had like a standard 4-year contract or whatever. I think they're longer now for GMs. But like I have a 4-year contract. We never win the division. If we make the playoffs, it's an accident. But I get guys into Canton, and then everybody else who doesn't get into Canton cannot play a lick. Cannot play a lick.
I like it.
Just soft.
Home runs and strikeouts, right?
It's modern baseball, baby.
Swing for the fences. I like that.
I'll be better as a basketball GM with that philosophy, but I don't understand basketball like that. I don't get it.
Yeah. I will say every year you text me like 2 guys and they always end up being like better than anyone was expecting. So I'll give you credit for that. And it's usually because the athleticism matched with some different, whatever the different traits are. I think it's like explosiveness is sort of a vague concept, but
Christian
like you get
Watson.
something that
Unfortunately,
you can see.
Christian Watson
Just can't stay healthy, man.
Yeah. Christian Watson. Who was the one? There was one a couple of years ago that I just nailed. Oh, Terry Gulen. Nailed him.
Yeah.
Nailed on.
I mean,
said that,
yeah.
Remember that one guy I really liked who retired to go make crystals? Exactly.
No,
he was in Hard Knocks. He was a Stanford tight end, Devon Castillo or something. And
he went to go make crystals.
Yeah, and so you learn through that process.
Sure.
Scout to see if they like crystals before you take them. If they're great,
that's a big lesson.
Athletes. Yep, it's a great lesson. All right, what's your storyline number 2?
Basically this is along the same lines. It's will the edge rushers establish themselves as the best overall group in the draft? I think they are potentially, this edge rusher group, the deepest position group in the draft. There's just a bunch of guys that I really like, that I think will end up being, productive, at least role players for their teams. But I think there's a couple guys in the class. Abdul Carter's one of them. I think he's going to test. If he does test, he's going to just blow up the combine. Because he's really springy, athletic. He's really explosive, really fast. Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, Mike Green, Michael Williams from Georgia, Donovan Eziraku. I'm probably butchering his name. Eziraku from Boston College, James Pierce we mentioned, Josiah Stewart from Michigan, Savion Jones, LSU. There's a bunch of just defensive linemen in general. Some of these guys might end up being sort of hybrid inside-outside players, but you just watch these guys on tape, explosiveness, athleticism, and just dripping with upside. So I'm excited to see how these guys all test, how they look in the drills, how they can move, basically their movement skills. And I think that coming out of the combine, I should say, in a couple of weeks, it won't surprise me if people are just really, really raving about this edge class.
I'm going to pair that with my third. I floated this to Mina the other day, and she didn't believe it, which is
okay.
We're off on the wrong foot, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So I still think it's going to happen. So we always overrate we're learning the wrong lessons from the Super Bowl, right? So like the Giants beat Tom Brady, and everybody's like, we got it. Everybody's got to get a 4-man pass rush. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Novel stuff.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Oh, it helps to have a pass rush. Okay.
Or the Seahawks, bigger physical cornerbacks, and all of a sudden, that guy, Stanley Jean-Baptiste, the guy,
Jean-Baptiste,
second round.
There was a whole bunch of
Jimmy Smith,
copycat types.
Yeah. Everybody's going. Every 6'3" cornerbacks flying off the shelf, right? And what I think is going to happen, instead of learning the actual lesson, which is sign guys early, be good at every position, like stack right. guys over and over again, but like
have one of the best rosters ever.
Yes, have one of the best rosters ever. That's my lesson. I think that there's going to be teams that start overdrafting on the trenches, which is fine, totally fine. Like you think about like Josh Connor, like where it's just like, hey, it's pick 20. So like there's a quote for High Roseman, Alec Lewis on Earth the other day that I've been thinking about ever since, where after took Landon Dickerson, how he was like, I know there's people who get sick of us drafting a lineman, but that's how we won a championship, and that's how we're going to win another championship. That was 2021. He was right. And I think a lot of times the one thing we don't put enough emphasis on is like an owner like sees a tweet and then it's like, let's do that. And then everybody's too scared to correct the owner. And it's like, for me, the owner is going to walk into a handful of these facilities and be like, we got to just keep drafting linemen until we fix it. And again, that's not to Alec Lewis at this point. And he was doing a piece on how the Vikings and the Eagles could, how the Vikings could learn the lessons of the Eagles. And one of the funny things he had a chart. And one of the funny things is the Eagles and the Vikings have taken the exact same amount of trench players, like in recent years.
Oh, interesting.
It's just that the Eagles were good and the
They've
Vikings
hit.
were
Yeah.
bad. And
Mhm.
like that, again, that's the lesson. But I do think that there's owners who are going to be like, we're just going to keep drafting trenches because we want to be
Mhm.
the Eagles.
Yeah, I think, and we could see this is that type of draft too, because there's a lot of defensive
Yep.
tackles, a lot of edges, edge players. There's a lot of guys who are sort of tackle guard hybrids in this class. I don't know if
Mhm.
there's any real true blue chip tackles. Will Campbell from LSU, maybe,
Mhm.
but then even then, he's being talked about as potential guard at the next level. So I think this is a meat and potatoes draft. There's going to be a lot of these guys. Last year it was like super rare thing where what was it, like 15 straight offensive players went off the board before a defensive player came off the board.
Mhm.
This is
Was
another season.
Latu was the first defensive player?
Latu, I think, was the
Yeah.
first defensive
And then
player.
Dallas Turner.
Yeah, which is just wild. We've never seen anything like that.
The Falcons drafted a second quarterback before a defensive player came off the board.
Right. So maybe this year there's just like 15 trench guys, maybe even like 20 trench guys, and then just like a sprinkle in a couple other positions. Like I would not be surprised whatsoever if that type of thing happens. Because it's not a great receiver class.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ted McMillan.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, it's on Bruce Feldman's freak list, but
he's awesome. I like him.
It doesn't seem like the type of year where it's going to be like 6 wide receivers in the top 20 like some of these years.
Not, I doubt that will happen. And so yeah, it's going to be a handful of quarterbacks. Genty's going to go in there somewhere, and then a bunch of trench players. It's just going to be a bunch of trench players. So it's going to be very interesting from that point.
People keep mocking Genty to the Cowboys, and I understand why you would do that. I don't think they can do that.
Just from like roster building point of view,
they just need so much more.
Yeah,
we can't be doing Jerry Jones, Glory Days picks.
Right.
They got to take the card.
Who do you want him to go to? Because I have a hard time putting him in a mock because I think he's good enough. Genty, yeah, I think he's good enough to go in the top 10. But my question is, like, what team is going to take him in the top 10?
Yeah,
I put him to the Bears the other day.
Should he just be Najee Harris's replacement?
I mean, yeah, that would be. I think Steelers fans would be super stoked about that. But that's a little later in the draft. I think
I'm just asking who's going to take him before that.
Yeah, I know.
He's going to be a first round pick no matter what happens.
So, like I said, I gave him to the Bears in my last mock. That was 10th overall. That's one of those things where the Bears probably should go another direction, but it's just going to be,
They're the one.
Maybe they get really excited.
McCaskey should walk in and be the owner I'm describing and say, we're just going to take offensive linemen until it's fixed.
Right.
For God's sakes.
And then I don't know. Like, honestly, you go down the list. The 49ers won't. Cowboys, they might. The Dolphins probably won't. The Colts probably won't. Falcons definitely won't. Cardinals, I could see the Cardinals doing it.
Yeah.
The
Bengals. They're out on Trey Benson already. The Bengals.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
I don't.
Would the Bengals do it?
I don't know if the Bengals can do it.
God, that'd be fun though, wouldn't it?
I don't think they can do that.
They just got Chase Brown in like the 5th round. I think they probably just should.
Well, also they need defensive players.
Right.
They're gonna draft. Also, Mike Brown only drafts. Typically, he's gotten away from the past couple years. Just the most famous guy from the most famous schools.
Right.
That's all he does.
I mean, there's something to be said about that. The success rate on that's probably pretty decent. But yeah, I don't know. Genty, yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see where he goes, and I think he's good enough to be in the top 10, but I just don't know if it'll happen because what team is going to pull the trigger. But then again, I didn't really see like the Lions trading up for Gibbs a couple of years ago. I just didn't see that coming.
No one ever suspects the Lions. Yeah. Hey, what's your last storyline?
Well, a good segue here. Does this running back class actually have a chance to be one of the all-time best?
Oh, okay.
Because
lay out the case.
There's a lot of people talking about this class in that way. I'm not 100% bought into that quite yet. There's a couple of guys I really like. And I can just go down the list. Obviously Genty, huge on Genty. He's going to be awesome. I really like Caleb Johnson from Iowa, and I'm going to be interested to see how he runs if he does run, because I think he's got some pretty good speed. He's not as explosive as some of the other guys in this class, like Travion Henderson. He has more juice than maybe any of the other running backs in this class. I cannot wait to see what Travion Henderson does if he does test. Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, getting a ton of hype and for good reason. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Cam Scatabo, big storyline this week. Will he test? Is he better than a 4.6? I sure hope so. Because if he's better than a 4.6 in the 40, I could see him getting drafted on day 2. If he goes lower than that, might be day 3. But he's just one of those players who's quicker than fast, and he's just, really good at avoiding tackles. Just a good football player. But I think he does need to run pretty well, or at least test explosively, to kind of go up into that day 2 range. But my big question is basically like, after this week, is everyone still as hyped up on these running backs, or is there kind of like okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit? Like, this is a pretty good group, not one of the best of all time. Because there's people talking like it's like one of the best ever. I'm like, I don't know if I can get there.
Sure. We'll see how they test. We'll also see if, honestly, again, going back to the Eagles, if the Saquon thing is like so impactful that teams are like, yeah, we're good. We're good with late first with a running back again.
Yeah.
We're back. Running backs are back. And what, Pete Carroll's back in the league?
Hell
he's taking a second round running back. He's taking a second round running back.
Totally. I love that. Do you think Pete will take a first round QB? So, like, obviously a lot of people are talking
I think
about
it's going to be hard.
This has been my contention. Well, that would make it easier choice for them. But my contention is right now, at least, that it feels unlikely that Carroll's going to like hitch his wagon to a rookie quarterback in year 1 with the Raiders.
I agree. Should he sign Russell Wilson?
No, I don't.
Thanks.
So didn't they they ended up, there was reports that Wilson was like trying to get Pete and John Schneider fired at one point. Basically, it was like a power struggle.
I was trying to get you fired the entire time we were at the Ringer, and we're
I know.
still great buddies. It was just a hobby of mine.
Yeah, I guess you can see above that. You can get through it for content's sake.
I was just bored. I was like, let's get DK fired. No, I heard they patched it up. Someone said that.
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think they're going to sign Russ, but I'm not putting it out.
I think they're going to. I don't think they're going to do a rookie quarterback. I think they're going to find, like, does Darnold make sense there?
Yeah, I think Darnold makes a lot of sense there. I'm trying to think, because like Aaron Rodgers, I can't tell if Rodgers and Carroll would get along. maybe they like vibe over like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. There's a little bit of that going on.
There's one notable
they could
one.
Like personality.
I think both of them have
something about
questions.
steel beams and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe they could vibe together on that.
That's a good place to end it. Is that particular conspiracy theory? Danny Kelly,
there we go.
Fantasy football podcast at the Ringer. Is it now the Draft podcast?
Yeah, the Ringer NFL Draft podcast. I think actually today we are changing.
We're flipping the logo.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're the only podcast in the world that changes the name and the art midway through the season. So, yeah,
I doubt that.
Super smart.
I doubt you're the only one.
No, we like to say that. It's like we're the world's best cup of coffee. We're the world's only podcast that does that. So,
thank you, buddy.
Thank you.